Good morning and welcome to the Virginia Festival of the Books, brought to you by the Virginia Foundation for the Humanities. I'm John Ragasta. I'm a resident fellow at the Virginia Foundation, and we're going to be talking today with Chris Phillips about his new book, Constitution Cafe. But first, three things you need to do. First, make sure your cell phones are turned off. Second, before you leave, please fill out an evaluation. They're very important to the festival and how we do things. And third, we always point out that the Virginia Foundation Festival of the Book is free of charge, but it's not free of cost. So we hope you'll either go online or get an envelope and make a contribution to the festival. After we're done with our presentation today, we are going to have the sale of the book, Constitution Cafe, and I think Chris would be happy to sign it for you, so we hope you'll join us with that as well. During the question and answer period, let me ask that, I know it's a small room, but please raise your hand and we're going to give you a mic, because we are being filmed today by C-SPAN Book and by City of Charlottesville Channel 10. So please let us make sure that you're on the film as well. So as I said, let me welcome Chris Phillips and talking about Constitution Cafe. Chris has been working for a number of years to encourage civil discourse and conversation about the issues that are important to us. In 2001, he authored Socrates Cafe, which was an effort to start a dialogue on questions of philosophical and other social import through a Socratic method of questioning and discussion. There are now over 600 Socrates Cafes operating around the world where people gather to discuss issues of current events and important philosophical issues. Constitution Cafe began as an effort to address constitutional illiteracy and apathy, and what Chris refers to as the untouchable nature of the U.S. Constitution. Now, he rightly points out that Jefferson would be appalled by the fact that we have made the Constitution scriptural. Jefferson, in talking about the Constitution, said this: "Some men look at constitutions with sanctimonious reverence and deem them like the Ark of Covenant, too sacred to be touched. They ascribe to the men of the preceding age a wisdom more than human, and suppose what they did to be beyond amendment. But as new discoveries are made and new truths disclosed, and manners and opinions change with the change of circumstances, institutions must advance also and keep pace with the times." Jefferson certainly thought that a republic works when the people are engaged in the republic and in their own governance, including defining their own constitution. He famously suggested that constitutions should be rewritten every 19 years, until the ever-practical James Madison told him that that might not be a good idea. Nonetheless, Jefferson, as Chris reminds us, tells us that a little rebellion now and then is a good thing, and that we need to be aware of our own constitutional governance. With that, let me turn it over to Chris Phillips in discussing Constitution Cafe.
Thank you very much, John. How are y'all doing today? Good. Did any of you happen to see the article in the New York Times last month where they did a study of constitutions that have been developed in modern times that show that the U.S. Constitution is no longer the model that is being used, that it has fallen out of favor, and that anybody see that? Anybody?
I did.
You did. Okay. That was perfect. My moderator read it. Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg said, well, if I were writing a constitution today, I wouldn't use the U.S. Constitution as a model either. And most pointed to, for instance, the Constitution in Canada as a more relevant model today. I'm just wondering, before I even begin my formal presentation, how many of you today think that the U.S. Constitution would serve as a good model for constitutional creation in other nations? Anybody? A lot of you. A whole lot of you. Can you tell me why? Is the microphone out there? Can you go ahead and... I saw a lot of hands go. I'd like to know, yes, right over here.
Well, I guess because it's been around for 236 years.
So the fact that it's been around a long time means to you that...
It works.
It works. Okay. Well, I'm going to use you as a foil for just a second. How many of you think our government is working just, on the federal level at least, just fine and dandy these days? Oh, dear. Wait. I know not one hand goes up. How many of you think our Constitution works just fine? Hands are going up. Is there a disconnect there? No. Who says no? Tell me why. Can you tell me why? I've already got the poor man in the microphone just running all over.
Because even as bad as it looks, people are engaged in what is going on in the national dialogue. Even if we're on opposite sides, people are speaking out. And in the end, someone will win. And this has been a very stable country for the last, well, we did have a civil war, of course, but putting that aside, there's been stability, and the United States has been a blessing to the rest of the world ever since.
Okay. So, federal government, woefully dysfunctional, Constitution, fine. Government, stable. Okay. Anybody else want to remark about that? Yes, sir. And then
I'll address two questions. One was, is it a good model? I think there are some themes in the Constitution, including separation of powers, that are excellent and are worth considering for any new entity making a Constitution. In terms of a possible disconnect between the Constitution and the functioning of the federal government, I'm not sure that the two are perfectly linked. By that I mean the individuals and the issues that create poor functioning of our federal government are not necessarily because of our Constitution.
not necessarily.
Yes.
Okay.
That does not mean that the Constitution is perfect and cannot be improved in any way.
Right.
But why are you linking, or why are you suggesting a link between the Constitution and poor functioning
Oh, I didn't.
of the federal government?
I'm just trying to see if there is one or not.
Well, you asked the two questions
I did.
temporally.
I did.
That implies that...
Oh, you think it implies? Okay. I'm not so sure. How's that for Socratic waffling? Yes, ma'am.
Several months ago, I heard discussion on NPR with a scholar from UVA, I believe, who's written a book about James Madison that said that James Madison intended that the country, that the Constitution act in the way it is currently doing, that this back and forth between differing philosophies was something that he had consciously set up.
Okay. One other person wanted to say something.
I think he sort of said what I was going to say, but the problem is that we don't go by the Constitution. Congress doesn't go by the Constitution. We have the president with executive orders that violate our freedom. We have the National Defense Appropriations Act, which violates our freedom. And nobody seems, our representatives don't seem to be standing up and protecting us from that.
Okay. I saw a lot of heads nodding. A lot of you seem to agree that that's the problem, that we're not going by the Constitution that we have. A lot of people are sort of, how many people agree with that notion? A lot of folks do. But you just pointed to the legislative branch. How about executive branch? They have this thing called executive power, which they wield. The legislative branch has pretty much ceded to the legislative branch has pretty much ceded to the executive the power to declare war. There have only been 5 declared wars in U.S. history. Last one was when? World War II. All these other things, believe it or not, they're not wars. Even if we call them a war, they're not wars because Congress hasn't declared anything, and yet they're being funded by this body. And then the judicial branch has this power called what? Judicial review. Do you see anything in the federal document that gives them this power, where they determine matters of constitutionality? It's nowhere to be seen. And guess who the president was who threw down the gauntlet about that and said that they didn't have that power? First one. Thomas Jefferson. He sure did. But again, we can hark back in just a minute to our Constitution again. But